right. Well, hey guys, we'll get started in just a second. Get John on here. All right, thank you all so much for hopping on, working on getting John loaded on here. We're going to do just a quick FAFSA Q&A for you guys. Definitely excited for those of you that have already hopped on. Looks like we've got about 35 people on here live, so definitely hang tight with us as we get loaded in. Not sure. There we go.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, awesome. Thanks for hopping on, John. We've got a pretty good crowd here, so definitely thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to go ahead and kick this off. My name is Ben Sterling. I serve here at Tennessee Achieves, and I've got my colleague John here as well to do a little bit of a FAFSA Q&A, FAFSA information session for you guys that I know are working through that Tennessee Promise requirement. I'm going to allow John to go over some best practices that he thinks of when it comes to FAFSA, and also answer your questions live on the broadcast. So for those of you that are joining us live, we'll do this every Friday from now through February 1st. And this is an opportunity for you to ask us your questions about FAFSA or any other Tennessee Promise requirement, and we can answer those for you and get you an answer. So if you have questions, type those in the chat. Send us a little comment. Tell us you're here, and then type them in the questions box, whatever works best for you. But I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to John and let him introduce himself.
Hey, everyone. Thanks, Ben, for having me on here today. As Ben mentioned, my name is John, and I am a complete coach with Tennessee Achieves. I mainly work with students in the Chattanooga region that are a part of Tennessee Promise. I've been with Tennessee Achieves for about 3 months now. And prior to that, I was actually an advisor for college and career readiness at Powell High School here in Knoxville. So I'm very familiar with the college going process, and of course, getting your FAFSA submitted and filed correctly as well. So just a little bit of a background on me. I was actually born in Nashville, Tennessee, but I've lived all over the state of Tennessee pretty much, ranging from Jackson, Tennessee, all the way to Morristown, Murfreesboro, and now I'm in Knoxville officially. And I've been in Knoxville for about 11 years now. I went to school at the University of Tennessee here in Knoxville and graduated in 2016 with a degree in sustainability. So I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we definitely thank you for hopping on and taking the time. I know in your previous role, you helped students file a whole lot of FAFSAs, and in this role today at Tennessee Achieves, certainly part of our day-to-day. So I wanted you to just share from your experience, what are your 3 best tips? So for a student who's filing a FAFSA for the first time, what are your 3 best tips for them?
Absolutely. So definitely number one, and I have always hounded my students about this in the past, and I still do to this day. Top priority is to get it done as early as you possibly can. I really say that because technology is not always our friend, and it comes down to it. If you're waiting till the last moment to get it submitted, you might end up having issues, and that could prevent you from getting it filed before that February 1st deadline. So that's definitely my first tip.
Oh, I totally agree. And, that's one of those things reason why we send so many emails. If you haven't filed your FAFSA at this point, you're about to start hearing from us a couple times a week to make sure that you're staying on track for that Tennessee Promise deadline, February 1st, right around the corner. And again, to John's point, you don't want to be in this shape that I've found some students in lately, which is they can't get their FAFSA to load or submit, and we don't want technology to be a barrier. So go ahead and get that done. Yeah. So what's number 2?
So my second one, and I was really bad about this when I was a student, so learn from my mistakes for sure. Save your FSA ID, username, and your password. Put it somewhere in a safe place. Tuck it away for a little bit. You're going to have to continue to file the FAFSA each year that you're a college student. So make sure that you tuck it away. Keep it safe. It's a headache for you to go and reset your username and your password all the time. So just have that at the ready, but keep it in a safe place where you'll remember it for sure.
Great suggestion. That's every year students are scrambling to try to find those usernames and passwords. And if your phone number or your email's changed since you last filed FAFSA, you can't use the recovery tool. It's always a challenge. So yeah, put it in a note in your phone. That's what I always tell people to do, or screenshot it. That way that you've at least got a record of it somewhere where we could go track it back down in the future. Again, thanks everybody for hopping on. Got about 20 viewers right now. If you have questions, put those in the chat. Put them in the questions box. We will certainly get to those. And John, I think you had 3. So what's your third one?
So my third one, and this is going to be really important to you guys, especially if you are planning on utilizing a Tennessee Promise Scholarship. You're going to want to make sure that you list that top school in the #1 slot on your FAFSA application. And that's just important for not only you, but also the college that you are attending or that you plan on attending. Yep. You're going to want to make sure that they are the sole recipient of the FAFSA. Even if you are interested in other colleges, make sure that you put your top choice in there first.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the reason for that, to give everybody just a little bit of an insight on that, is so the college that you list first on your FAFSA is where we're going to send all of your state financial aid first. So just because you have, let's say, for example, you want to go to Pellissippi State, you put University of Tennessee first. On our system, it's going to say that you preferred University of Tennessee, and that's where we're going to think that you're headed until you change it on your TSAC portal. So I always encourage you to put, like John said, college preference first. Just it makes everything work out easier for you in the next few months. Great advice. All right, so we've talked about what you should do, but as we all know, the FAFSA can be somewhat intimidating and a little bit complicated. I worked on one last night. It was a little complicated. So what's one thing the students should look out for, like a mistake that you could try to avoid?
So one easy mistake, again, in working with the FAFSA in the past, and I've actually made that mistake as well, is missing that signing and submitting. That is a major part of the FAFSA, and you get to a point in the FAFSA where it will list out pretty much your application in a condensed form, and you may think you're done at that point in time. There's actually one or two more steps, is to actually sign and then get your FAFSA submitted. So that's an easy mistake to make, but it's important that you don't miss that.
Yeah, I was actually stuck on that spot with a student last night. That's where we were kind of stuck on getting the parent to sign it, which it's not submitted until the parent has signed that. That's a great piece of advice, and something I think a lot of people maybe overlook, but it does result in you not filing by the deadline if you don't sign it. So huge piece to remember. If you're at that point and you can't get it to work, or you're panicking in that space, connect with our team, and we'll do everything that we can to help you troubleshoot that process. If you're having trouble with it, we want to make sure that you get it submitted by the deadline. All right, so that's all. John, any other words on that, or you want to move on to some questions?
Let's go ahead and hit up some questions.
All right. So we've got a couple in here in the chat that these are interesting questions. Don't often get these. So what can you say to students who have taken a gap year? Will we be able to reapply if we took a gap year? I'll take this one, John.
Okay.
So in terms of a gap year, I'm thinking you mean a year after you have graduated from high school. And so with Tennessee Promise, you have to start the fall following high school graduation. So that is one of the requirements for the scholarship. It's say you graduate this May in 2022, you have to start the fall immediately following your high school graduation to maintain Tennessee Promise eligibility. So there's not a gap year built into the scholarship eligibility there. Got a question in the questions box, same one about gap year. All right, so guys, type your questions in. Let us know if we can help. Otherwise, this is a pretty short session usually if you don't have a lot of questions, but please type those in. We've got some new guests on here. FAFSA Q&A. So if you have any questions about filing the 2022-2023 FAFSA, type those in. It can be things that aren't related to the FAFSA. It could be Tennessee Promise, could be other scholarships, and we're certainly happy to answer those questions as well. The student, looks like we still have a student with a question about the gap year. Why don't you shoot us a DM on Instagram, and we can provide you with some more information about that component of the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. Shoot us a DM, and we'll give you some more details. All right, looks like we do not have any additional questions, so where would you recommend to get other scholarships? John, you might be able to take that one.
So there are a wide variety of places you can find scholarships. Definitely meeting with your guidance counselor at your high school. They are a great resource. Additionally to that, there are plenty of different websites. There's a fast web that you can get on. College Board has a great list of national scholarships where they actually give you an option to fill out like a scholarship profile, and they will actually fine-tune scholarships that fit the criteria that you put inside of that profile. So I always recommend that to my students for sure. Additionally to that, start looking at which college that you're interested in attending and looking at their scholarship page. They have plethora of scholarships available to you, and a lot of times students don't really realize that exists. So you might be one of the only applicants for it. So definitely utilize your guidance counselor. Use national scholarship websites like FastWeb or College Board, and definitely research your college of choice and find their scholarship page, and definitely that they're going to be able to provide you with plenty of information on there as far as what they offer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always my go-to. Talk to your financial aid office. They want to do everything they can to help you find ways to pay for college, and they'll definitely connect you with institutional and non-institutional funding sources. They're the pros there. How's my FAFSA linked through the Mary Ann Locher scholarship? I've never heard of that. To Daring Danny 3. So if you want to shoot us a DM, provide us a little bit more information about that scholarship. I'm unfamiliar with that. So I'm not sure if FAFSA, if it's a community-based scholarship, I'm not sure how FAFSA would work with that, but we're certainly happy to try to find an answer for you for that. Does it automatically refill the FAFSA, like all the information from 21, 22 for the 22, 23? That's a great question. So if you've already filed, if you're a student that's already in college and you filed last year, when you log in, you're going to renew. So when you go to 22, 23 FAFSA, a lot of that information will pull back in from the previous years. You're just going to update your parents' finance information from 2020 will be the tax information used to file that new FAFSA. But yeah, a lot of the information will pull through, which is helpful. How does a parent with a second child in college complete a FAFSA for their second child? Do you sign into the one from the first child or brand new FAFSA? It's my understanding that you'll create. John, do you know this?
So absolutely. If you've got a second child going into college, you will have to actually create a new FAFSA for them. But you, as the parent, will use the same FSA ID that you use for your first child.
Okay, well, that's helpful. Good to know. There was a question in here about ROTC and Tennessee Promise and ROTC in colleges. If you want to expound on that just a little bit, I think I'm not sure if the community colleges have an ROTC program. I know, like, for example, Austin Peay has a pretty diverse ROTC program, and you can use Tennessee Promise at Austin Peay. I know that you might be able to do some of your community service through that, but I'm not sure how it would correlate necessarily in terms of scholarship eligibility. If you applied to Tennessee Promise but were rejected, can you get it if your situation has changed? So that's a good question. So when you apply for Tennessee Promise, it's an open application, so every student can apply for that scholarship as long as you apply by the deadline and you meet scholarship requirements as far as completing the application by the deadline, filing your FAFSA, watching your mandatory webinar by the deadline, and submitting community service. So all of those things. There's not really a rejection process for Tennessee Promise. So if you want to shoot us a message, we might be able to help elaborate on that a little bit, provide a little bit more context there on that question. Happy to help you for sure, but I'm not sure exactly what a Tennessee Promise rejection would look like. All right. Looks like that's all the questions for now. Definitely happy to answer questions anytime. So our direct messages are always open. Shoot us a message. We'll get back with you there and provide as much context as we can and help you try to find an answer to whatever questions that you've got. There's a question. So when I tried to change my college and Tennessee Promise scholarship, it wouldn't let me. Okay, that could be a lot of different things, I think. Depends on maybe the institution that you're trying to select and all of that. So certainly connect with us after the live, and we'll see if we can try to troubleshoot that for you. All right, guys. Any parting words, John?
I think that's it. For students with the FAFSA, go ahead and get it done now. Like I said earlier, you can't rely on technology when it comes down to it all the time. So be sure to go ahead and knock it out as early as you can, so you're not at the risk of ineligibility for Tennessee Promise by not meeting that February 1st deadline.
Yep. I'm going to wrap it up with this last question that's on here. What happens if I miss my county deadline for FAFSA? So I've never heard of a county-specific deadline, but when it comes to Tennessee Promise, your deadline's February 1st. And if a student doesn't file the 2022-2023 FAFSA by February 1st, you will lose Tennessee Promise scholarship eligibility. And we don't want that to happen. So remember, February 1st, very, very important. Have that 2022-2023 FAFSA filed by then. All right, last question. We're still getting a few in here. The Hope Scholarship, is it the same as Tennessee Promise? If you applied for Tennessee Promise, does it automatically apply for the Hope? No. So Tennessee Promise and Hope are two different scholarships. You apply for the Hope Scholarship when you complete your FAFSA. So when you file that 2022-2023 FAFSA, you're applying for the state-funded Hope Scholarship. Tennessee Promise is separate from that. It's everybody's eligible for Tennessee Promise if you graduate from a Tennessee high school. And you're part of that current cohort. So there's not an academic or income requirement for that. When it comes to the Hope Scholarship, it's an academic-based scholarship, so you have to have a 21 on your ACT or a 3.0 high school GPA to be eligible for that. All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much for hopping on. February 1st, right around the corner. File your 2022-2023 FAFSA. Let us know if you have any questions. Thanks for hopping on, John.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.
See you guys.
Bye.